257.
Have you ever looked forward to something? Silly question, isn't it? Maybe at Christmas time. I guess more when we were children than since we've gotten older, wondering what gifts there would be and what there would be under the tree or as a gift. Sometimes maybe surprised, maybe sometimes even told what it might be, but you couldn't believe that that would be the gift. You just couldn't imagine that it would be true. But there are other times we look forward to things. I guess kids still look forward to being a teenager. What will it be like? Will it really happen? Maybe getting married or first child. When will it happen? Is it really to be true? Looking forward to a job. Maybe feeling like you have a promise of one and just wonder if it'll ever materialize or be there. What about the end of time? Do we ever wonder what kinds of things will be happening then and how they will come to pass and what they will amount to? Well, it's not unusual because we understand that kings and prophets, they wonder. We're told in Luke 10 and verse 24, "But I say unto you that many prophets and kings desire to see the things which you see, and saw them not, to hear the things which you hear, and didn't hear them." Those who were in the presence of Jesus when he was here on the earth the first time were enjoying things that people for centuries had longed to see and hear and be a part and wondering what it would be like. And when it became a reality, it was different than what they expected at that time. They did not expect, the disciples did not expect that Jesus would be so humble and not having the prominence and the importance that they expected a king to have. But you know that they're not the only ones. Did you know that we find in 1 Peter 1 and verse 12 that angels wanted to see things and want to see things and didn't see them? To whom it was revealed that not unto themselves but unto you did they minister these things, which now have been announced unto you through them that preach the gospel unto you by the Holy Spirit, sent forth from heaven, which things angels desire to look into. So it's not just an earthbound expectation of something that's out there in the future, but we find that angels even long to see them. There's an interesting verse, I think, again in the 12th chapter of Luke, in verses 45 through 56. I want to read them. "But if the servant shall say in his heart, The Lord delays his coming, and shall begin to beat the men servants and maidservants, and to eat and drink, and to be drunken, the Lord of that servant will come in a day when he does not expect it, and in an hour when he does not know, and shall cut him to pieces, and appoint his portion with the unfaithful. But that servant who knew his Lord's will, and did not make ready, nor do according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. But he that did not know, and did things worthy of stripes, shall be beaten with few. And to whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required, and to whom they commit much, of him they will ask the more. I came to cast fire upon the earth, and what do I desire if it is already kindled? But I have a baptism to be baptized with, and now I am straitened still till it be accomplished. Think ye that I have come to give peace to the earth? I tell you no, but rather division. For there shall be from henceforth 5 in one house, divided 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They shall be divided, father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against her mother, daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And he said to the multitudes, when you see the cloud rising in the west, straightway you say, there comes a shower. And so it comes to pass. And when you see a south wind blowing, you say, there will be a scorching heat, and it comes to pass. You hypocrites, you know how to interpret the face of the earth and the heaven, but how is it that you know not how to interpret the time? And why even of yourselves do you not judge what is right? Thinking about things that are future, the parable that he talks about, these things happening and so on. But how much do we watch the Weather Channel? How often do we stay up at night to see what the weather's going to be tomorrow, anticipating what's going to happen? Or you have along the Weather Channel on television, you have the days ahead, 5 or 6 days, and you look forward. You know, what's going to be Tuesday? I've got some big event. It's going to rain. It's going to be cold. We look forward to it, and we think about it. And the question that Jesus is asking here, how much do we think about the end time? How much do we think about what's going on in the world now? How much do we think about what the Scripture has to say about what's going on in the world today? I wonder what could have been in their mind when the Word was revealed to them, some truth. What could they have been thinking? For instance, in Daniel, the 12th chapter, a couple of things are mentioned there that are quite interesting, and wonder, of course, throughout Daniel there are many things that are interesting, but at least thinking about this one, the 12th chapter in verse 4. Daniel is told to shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. He said, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. I wonder if he thought about those words. Wonder if he was thinking about faster horses. I wonder if he was thinking about chariots that could run quicker with more horses or whatever. What was he thinking about? That many shall run to and fro, back and forth. Was he thinking about anything like is going on today? Remember, they've seen pictures, I guess, or heard of the first cars that came out. Open, very simple, the steam engine or whatever, and they were wearing goggles, you know, and everything, protecting their eyes, and they might be going 10 miles an hour. And later, you know, they got to be faster, and now in the races, they do 200 miles an hour or more. What about airplanes? Doing Mark II, over 1,500 miles an hour. Could Daniel have ever imagined anything like that? Or the spaceships, I understand, travel 25,000 miles an hour. You know, how can these things be? Or knowledge increasing. It took the phone, well, let me start with the radio. How long did it take to reach 50,000 people? When the radio started, it took 38 years before there were 50,000 listeners. The television, whenever it started, it took 13 years to reach 50,000 people. But the internet took 4 years, the iPod took 3, and Facebook took 2 years to reach 50,000 people. Knowledge increasing. Unbelievable. Beyond our imagination. I was told some time ago that these phones have more computing power in this phone than all of the computers put together that put a man on the moon. It's mind-boggling. What was that, 69 or something, when the man, 67, when they landed on the moon? Just imaginable, the increase in knowledge. What could Daniel have been thinking of? You know, we have some way of comprehending and understanding what Daniel was told, 2,500 years ago about things that would happen. But we have other things that we wonder what could have been in their mind. For instance, in Revelation chapter 9 and verse 16, we have an interesting statement there. It says, "And the number of the armies of the horsemen was twice 10,000 times 10,000. I heard the number of them. 200 million man army. When this was written, there were only 200 million people living in the world. Only 200 million. And now, it prophesies here that there'll be an army of 200 million. What could John or any of the other readers have thought was going to happen to bring an army together of that magnitude? But there were 400 million. It took 1,650 years. In 1650, the population of the world reached 400 million. But it is zooming every day. It only took 100 years for the population to reach 1.3 billion. And then in 1950, it was 2.5 billion. 1980, 4.5 billion. 2000, 6 billion. And today, nearly 7 billion people. China has been able to put an army in the field already for some time of 200 million. What could they have been thinking of? Just think of the times that we're living in. These things are happening before our very eyes. We see them. And what do they mean to us? Another passage in Revelation. Revelation 6 and verse 8. We find there, "And I saw and behold a pale horse, and he that sat upon him, his name was Death, and Hades followed him. And there was given to them authority over the fourth part of the earth, 25%, to kill with the sword, famine, death, and by wild beasts of the earth." A fourth of the population of the earth to be killed. 25%. What would that be of 7 billion? I don't know. It would be approaching 2 billion, I guess. Can you imagine? In a brief period of time, 1 billion and a half people dying? They didn't even have any way to kill 1 billion and a half people then. But today, with the hydrogen bombs, the atom bombs, everything that are there, that could happen. It could happen any day, any time. We're living in times that kings and princes and angels even wondered how that could be. It's happening before our very eyes. But if we read further in chapter 9 of Revelation, in verse 15, "And the 4 angels were loosed that had been prepared for the hour, day, and month, and year. that they should kill the third part of men. 30%. 30%. How many is that? Well, it's easier math for me to work it out. If it's 6 billion people, 25% would be 1.5 billion. But then you have, what, 4.5 billion left, and a third of that would be another billion and a half. Half of the population in this brief span of time to be killed. I mean, they couldn't imagine. They could imagine maybe the numbers of their day, how many that would be, but the magnitude of it, even then, is staggering. But it's within the power of mankind today to do that. How can those things be? I think another great passage that it makes me wonder what they thought about when the Word was written is in Isaiah chapter 66. In verses 7 and 8, it says, "Before she travailed, or before she was in birth pains, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such a thing? Shall a land be born in one day? Shall a nation be brought forth at once?" We're living in the days when this happened. Most of us who are present here today were alive then. Israel proclaimed their independence on May the 14th, 1948. A leader in the Jewish community, Theodore Herzl, predicted in 1897 there would be a state of Israel in 50 years. It was almost to the day. But nothing happened, except World War I came along. And as a result of World War I, the nations decided to give them some land. There was an article this week in the paper in Nashville, I don't know whether it was here or not, but about Chaim Weizmann. He was a British scientist. And during the First World War, Britain was running out of gunpowder to be able to fight the war. Chaim Weizmann came up with an alternative compound that provided gunpowder for the British to have to use in the war. And they were able to continue fighting without missing a beat because of what Chaim Weizmann was able to devise in his lab. As a result of that, when the war was over, they wanted to recognize him and ask him, and he said he would like to have a land for the Jews, for his people. And as a result, Britain passed what was known and came to be known and still is known as the Balfour Declaration. You see, in the war, Great Britain ended up in control of all that Middle Eastern area. And they gave, in that Balfour Declaration, they were given a huge parcel of land, not only including all of Israel today, Palestine, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Iran, Saudi Arabia. All of that land was in the Balfour Declaration for them to get. But with political maneuverings and things that go on and among the nations in the world, it kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller until they have just that sliver of land where they are today. And that's being contested, we see everywhere. But World War I gave them the land, but they still didn't go back. They had a place to go that was legal so far as the nations of the world were concerned, but they didn't go back. So World War II came along, and with the Nazi activity to exterminate them, it gave them a reason to go back. And they began to pour back into Israel by the thousands. Anything, whatever they could do to get to Israel out of Europe particularly, they returned And there were maybe 50,000 who were there when they declared their independence. But today there are millions who are there living in that little strip of land. It came about in a day, almost. Other things have been working, but just amazing that it happened so quickly. We see also in Ezekiel that Israel would not only return from Assyria and Babylon, but the time when they will return from all the nations in the world. Ezekiel 37:21. And say unto them, Thus saith the Lord Jehovah, Behold, I will make the children of Israel, I will take the children of Israel from among the nations, whither they are gone, and will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land. Wow. Not just Babylon and Assyria where they had been deported, but from the nations of the world they would be brought back. And we see that that absolutely is true and happening. They come from every nation in the world. A very telling prophetic thing. We wonder what they would have thought about. In Zechariah chapter 12 and verse 3, we find very interesting comments. Beginning at verse 2, I will make Jerusalem a cup of reeling to all the peoples round about, and upon Judah also shall it be in the siege against Jerusalem. It shall come to pass in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone, for all the peoples that burden themselves with it shall be sore wounded, and all the nations of the earth shall be gathered together against it. Is that what's happening to Israel today? It's happening before our very eyes. America is certainly wavering a great deal, but is the only real support Israel has in the world. But this says a time will come when Israel and Jerusalem will be the biggest problem that the nations of the world have to deal with. And it is certainly a major problem that we see in the news almost every day. We wonder also about events that are happening and wonder what people think about and what they thought about whenever they were written. In Luke chapter 21 and verse 24, what were they thinking about? It says, And they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. What would they have thought about? Rome hadn't destroyed Jerusalem then. What could have been in their mind? What are they talking about, the times of the Gentiles? The Gentiles were, they were the unpopular, the people who were shunned and not a part. What could they have been thinking about? They were still in Jerusalem. They weren't in control of it. The Romans really were the political force that was there, but they were there in the city. It says they'd be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Jerusalem isn't trodden down by the Gentiles today. In the War of 1967, lasted 6 days. They captured Jerusalem again. Israel is in control of the city of Jerusalem. They made one maybe big mistake. Many think so, and they wonder about. But in order to try to have some peace in the area, they allowed the Muslims to pretty well control the Temple Mount. But they control all the rest of the city. And it's caused much conflict and much difficulty. But how were they thinking about Jerusalem? How long would that be? And even later, people reading it maybe, oh, the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. We wonder, what is the meaning of all that? But Jerusalem is not trodden down by the Gentiles anymore since the War of 1967, in which they recaptured the city. Another very astounding thing that I wonder what they thought about at that time when it was written, we find in Revelation 13. It's a passage, it's a thought, it's an idea that is familiar to you, I'm sure. But in verse 16 and 17 of the 13th chapter, and he causes all, the small and the great, the rich, the poor, the free, the bond, that there be given them a mark on their right hand or upon their forehead, and that no man should be able to buy or sell except he has that mark, even the name of the beast and the number of his name. This world ruler to control the economy of the world, control everything you spend. Everything. How could they think about that? What are you talking about? A mark. Well, maybe we thought of some number, which it mentions a number or something. But now we know just a microchip can contain everything in there and more information about us. And they already have it. Credit card, I don't know how much credit card business is done in this country, but there's not much done with cash. But Switzerland has been a cashless society for more than 2 years. Less than 2% of their transactions happen with cash. Your credit card, everywhere, I know that in the phone that I have and in other phones, there's a microchip that is smaller than my little fingernail that will hold 16 gigs of information. That is about large enough for there to be 4 libraries of 5,000 books each. One little chip. They're already, planting chips in animals. If you have a dog you love and care about, a chip can be planted in there and it can be tracked and found anywhere. It's just amazing what they can do. So, for the women, it wouldn't disfigure your face all that much to have a little chip put in, with plastic surgery and all the things they can do today are in your right hand. And then you go in the store, if you don't have it, you don't buy. You don't do anything if you don't have that chip. They were thinking, how can that be? There's no way to control people like that. But today, it's true. They can control us in that way. Those with the internet maybe have got on some of these satellite pictures to find your house. You can zoom right into your house. Whenever they're so specific. Whenever we were going to leave the camper with Nancy and Ty one time, they have a driveway that goes to, if you're looking toward the house, it goes around to the right, and then it comes back and turns to the left. And there's a wall on either side of it to get down. Well, we were wondering where we would be able to park the camper. So we got on the satellite, located their house, and could determine by the satellite that there was 15 feet between the walls of that curve that went down. And knew that with my son-in-law's help, Ty's help, and guiding, I could get the trailer back in the yard. That's specific. And I don't know, do you all remember recently the little doodle bug that was going through town that had this thing up on top of it, the Volkswagen? Had a structure up on it, and then it had this round ball. You know what they were doing? They were going through neighborhoods, photographing the neighborhood, so that you could get on your computer And you could follow right through the neighborhood and see the houses and the numbers and everything that was there. Well, it was objected to as invasion of privacy, and so it never did go online. But they have that capability. It's amazing what can be done with modern technology and things that are happening today. So, how often do we watch the weather? How often do we look to see what's happening there? I think that his question to the Jews at that time may be very applicable to us today. When you look out the window and you see the cloud rising in the west, you say there's going to be a shower. And it comes to pass. And when you see the south wind blowing, you say there's going to be scorching heat. And it comes to pass. You know how to interpret the face of the earth and the heaven, how it is that you do not know how to interpret the time. And why, even yourselves, do you not judge what is right? Where are we spending our time? What are we looking at? What is it that we are doing to understand what is happening today and to be prepared for the Lord's coming and for His taking out the church? We need to be watching and ready. In the Olivet Discourse of Matthew, we find that Jesus says there, "Now from the fig tree learn her parable." Again, looking at, when the trees begin to blossom, we're going to have pears, we're going to have apples, or what's going to be on them. When the fig tree branches now become tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that the summer is near. Even so, when you see these things, know you that He is near, even at the doors. So our question today is, are we ready? Prophets and kings would have loved to be living in the day in which we live. The coming of Jesus the first time, they wanted to see all that. But how much more do they want to see these events that are happening in our back door every single day? And even angels, they didn't know what was happening. They didn't know what was going on or how it would resolve itself and come to pass. So do we spend as much time studying or thinking about what the Bible has to say about the end time events as we do watching the weather? That was Jesus' question to these people. And our question for us today is, are we ready? Are we ready? For He says when the fig tree begins to blossom, you know there's going to be fruit. And we need to be ready because Jesus is at the door, ready to come at any moment. So we have a solemn invitation if any wish to respond and come for prayer or whatever need. We invite you to do so as we stand and sing.